around me. Head out on the highway, looking for adventure, and whatever comes our way. Yeah, down the road.
Hi, my name's Reichard. I'm a psychologist. I live in Florida. My road name is Doc. I'm CVMA number 2. I belong to the Florida chapter FM 20-5. Like I said, I'm a psychologist. I live in Florida at the present time. I'm retired. Pretty much enjoying the sun and riding my bike. I feel very honored that I was asked to do this video. To explain the intent of CVMA, I guess it's important to tell you the history and how I got involved in it. I got married after getting out of the service, and my wife asked me if I would put my motorcycle away because she didn't want me to get hurt while we were raising a family, so I did that. After our last child moved out of the house, the first thing I did was I run out and bought a motorcycle. My wife and I started riding, and I wanted to become part of something, like a brotherhood, something where there were a group of us that were for some purpose. I checked into veteran organizations in the area, and the only vet club that was near us was actually a 1% club. Too old for that, married, didn't need that kind of lifestyle at the time. So I went online, did a computer search for motorcycle clubs in the New Hampshire area, and I come across a very elaborate, how do I put it, website for Combat Vets Motorcycle Club. It listed, it had chapters in every state. You had to be a combat veteran to join, so I called up the person who was in charge, a guy named Iceman in Georgia, and he told me that they were just in the process of forming a chapter in New Hampshire, and that they already had like 3 people in the area. When I asked him where they were, he said they weren't in my area, but would be hooking up with me. So he said I would have to fill out the application, send in my information, and a check. So, not having been in the motorcycle world at that time a lot, I went for it, and I sent him in the check for a couple $100 and filled out the application. And about a week later, I got a overnight priority package with a set of colors. Well, I wasn't that naive. I know you just don't go putting colors on an area if you want to stay alive for very long. So I started doing a little checking. And there were maybe 50 or 60 people who got taken in on this. It turned out it was a scam from some guy who lived in a trailer park. And I got bit in the ass like everybody else did. One of the people contacted me, I believe it was out of the Missouri area, where there were more people than New Hampshire, and said, you know, why don't we turn this into an association? The reason we did an association instead of motorcycle club is it was a lot easier to grow it and get accepted. I don't know if you're familiar. I've rode in a couple clubs. It's not that easy just to form a new club in an area without going through a whole bunch of stuff. So we decided to start an association, and 45 of us made that decision to do so. There were more people than the 45 of us. That was one of the questions that you asked. But there were only 45 of the group that decided to hang in there and turn it into an association. The forming an association I had very little to do with. Unfortunately, I was the only person in New Hampshire who was stupid enough to send in my money on the internet. Most of the people were in the Missouri and Kansas area, so they did most of the work of bylaws and how it was going to run. They did keep me in the loop, in my opinion, and I voted, but they were the ones that really did more effort. And I'm sure some of them will be doing this video and can give you more details on that. But the original intent basically was very simple. We wanted a brotherhood. I don't think any of us saw it being as big as it is today. It was just a group that we would do veteran activities in our area. When the first patch came out that wasn't a motorcycle patch, I would put that on an extra vest I had, and I would only wear that vest if I went into some run that involved a charity, representing an association that I was the only member of in New Hampshire. But it made me feel like I was part of something. And we had a lot of communication, and we got to talk a lot. back and forth, through the computer. And it started growing. And that led to its ups and downs. I remember when they went to the VFW, wanted to hook up with the VFW to help them grow. I saw it as everybody else did, more local based, with smaller chapters all over the country where groups would participate, go help veteran needs. I never saw it as a big organization like it is today. I think that's good. You help more people. I think the downfall is that it takes a little bit away from the original intent of a brotherhood. I know there are some chapters I've seen when I travel across the country that have that feeling of being a brotherhood and a united group. And from what I read on forums and different things, I see there's a lot of groups that there are a lot of problems with. Just say I wouldn't feel comfortable, and I don't think that they displayed a brotherhood that was the original intent. Too much politics now because of the big stuff where people are fighting. I notice a lot of people have opinions and they differ. Problem is that a lot of that turns into lack of respect. I can disagree with somebody and still respect them. I've been married 40 years. I disagree with my wife 50% of the time. Of course, she forces me to do what she wants. But anyway, I respect her, and I always respect her. And I see a lack of respect a lot of times on Facebook and on forums, which disturbs me. And I think that's the one downfall of growing so big. My first conflict come when they decided, like I said, to go with the VFW. And the vote was more people wanted to go with the VFW to grow the organization. When I come back from Nam, I wasn't treated very well, like most Vietnam veterans were. And I wasn't very close with my father, but my father was a World War II veteran, and he was a member of the VFW. And he come up to me and asked me if I would join. He thought it would be a good way for us to bond, that now we had something in common and could develop a friendship. And I remember him taking me to the VFW, and they told him that I could come in as a guest, but that I was not welcome to join. And the reasoning was that Vietnam wasn't a war. It was a police action. They weren't very thrilled with Vietnam veterans at that time and really didn't want me anywhere around there. My response, as you could guess, was tell them what they could do with their organization. And I never forgot that. So when CVMA went and hooked up with the VFW, I was outvoted on it, but that's okay. I just never bought the VFW patch. I never wore the VFW CVMA patch. And I never went to a VFW. And it was okay for me because I had moved from New Hampshire to Florida, and now I went from being the only member in New Hampshire to being the only member in Florida. Needless to say, the VFW fucked over CVMA the same as they did me and my father, and that ended that. So that's the one advantage. I don't know if I'd be still in the CVMA if it was associated with the VFW that much long. One of the questions is where I would like to see CVMA grow. And I don't know if it's a matter of growing or just restructuring. I think the original intent didn't include the organization being as big as it is. Like the federal government, I think the federal government has a place, but I think the state government should have more control over the people within the state. And CVMA, I sort of believe the same thing. I think there needs to be a national board for the big picture, but I think the states and the chapters themselves have to take more control over what goes on. That's probably not going to be a popular answer, but I think that the people that just ride with CVMA need to feel they're more of a part of it and more a part in the decision making than people making decisions that are nowhere around them or not in their area and do not know what's going on with the community or other motorcycle clubs. Each area is different, and I think they need to have more of a say. One of the things I think that's important is the process of bringing members in. I've been lucky enough to travel across the country, and I've met a lot of different people, different members from Florida, in different chapters here, Indiana, Pennsylvania. It gives me pride when I go to Sturgis or Key West and I see our patch. It amazes me how big the chapters have grown, how big the whole organization has grown. With growth, like I said before, there are problems. I think one of the things is the process of how people become members. I get questions all the time on what my original 45 patch stands for. I've actually had people ask me if it was a military unit I was in. I think it's important that if you're going to become part of an organization, that you understand what the organization is. And I don't see how you can do that if you don't know the history of the organization or why it was started, what the goals originally were. Because organizations change. And I think it's important that the person has all that information. Similar to a motorcycle club, and I know we're not a club, but when I joined a club, there was a probationary period. And that was so I got to know the club, understand what their beliefs were, to see if I fit in or didn't fit in. And sometimes it worries me when I meet people that really have no idea other than they wear a patch and go to do veteran events. And their motives are good, but I just would really like to see a little bit more of the process of maybe the state commander making sure that that person has enough understanding in history and the true reason for this organization before they're patched. We really don't want to be a patch by mail type of organization. There are enough of them out there, and groups like that hurt the reputation of everybody, including us. An interesting fact I want to tell you about the 45s, because my wife's behind the camera there going like this. A lot of people ask how come I'm CVMA number 2 and my wife is CVA member number 3. And then I found out that now if you join, that your specific partner has the same number as you do, just it's an auxiliary. The original 45 are numbered 1 through 45, and that doesn't make any difference whether they would be a support member or whether they'd be an auxiliary. The original 45 are just numbered differently. 1 through 45. I really don't know how many are around. I've met 1 or 2 of them in person. It'd be nice to see them all. And hopefully I'll be seeing their videos and they'll be seeing mine, and maybe we can get together for a beer sometime. So that would be one of my goals in the future. There were 2 questions that were sent in, so I'd like to answer them. Wait, Tweety, what was the first one?
Why did founders let it get
Okay.
away?
The founders didn't let the organization get away. The founders were more involved in taking an internet club that was a scam and turning it into something. We turned it into an association and got the basic outline of how it should operate down. At that point, one of the things about how we organized it is that when people come in, there were different offices and people could run for different things, and the rules could change in the bylaws. So CVMA is a growing thing, and that has good points and bad points. But if we just dictated everything and said, okay, this is what we want it to be and everyone has to do what we say, there would probably be 9 or 10 of us still left in this association. So what happens with the association now and how it gets away is controlled by you. I have no more say in this organization than number 9002 or 9003. I'm not an officer. I have no special privilege. I do have a lifetime membership, but then I had to pay a lot of money up front, so it all balanced itself out. I think I have to live to be 110 where I break even on the dues. So I hope that answers that question. What I suggest, though, is if you don't like where CVMA is going, do something about it. This is your organization. It maybe was mine in 1999, 2000, and it's still mine, but now it's yours also. So if you don't like something, run for office and do something about it. And I'll support you. Cost you beer, but I'll support you. What's the next question, Tweety?
Why no motorcycle club? Why no MC?
Okay. It started out as an MC, and it became a joke as an MC because it was a scam. I had friends that were in motorcycle clubs in New Hampshire, and they already knew about CVMA or CVMC. It would have been nearly impossible to form it as a club. Much easier to form it as a chapter. To form a club, I'm not sure about your area, but for Florida, there's a coalition of clubs. If I want to form a club, I have to go up to the 1% club, and I have to make a presentation and tell them why I need to start a club instead of joining one of the clubs that are already in existence. They also try to limit it because there's so many events, and if you have a lot of clubs, it limits who attends what. So it's just a headache. And there weren't enough people. I mean, I was the only person in New Hampshire. For the first couple years, I couldn't have been my own club. I'm big, but I'm not that big. When I moved to Florida, I was a state rep representing myself. I was the only person here. And then there was another guy to come to Florida for about a year, and there were two of us. It had to start out as an association. And I think it's better as an association. I know there's a lot of stuff going on now about whether you can be in a club and CVMA, and I don't know where all that stands, but I do know that I was a member of the U.S. Military Vets MC and a member of Combat Vets at the same time. And the reason I could do that is because the club didn't consider an association a conflict of interest. So when I rode with my club, I wore my club colors. When there was a veteran event, on days where I didn't have club stuff, I would wear my CVMA. I'll give you an example. The holidays, our club did a Christmas event. Rode my bike, rode with our club, and we dressed like Santa, and we donated gifts and food to families that just didn't have it. On a day after that, I put on my CVMA vest and went up with a group of other people to support the veterans home to make sure that they had food and all to give out to homeless vets. So I believe you can do both things, but I think CVMA works better as an association. I think that's about it. I appreciate the interest. I hope I've answered the questions that you've had and hope to see you on the road. Have a good one.